Last week, I made a video theorizing about Andrias' past, as well as his relation to this mysterious pink frog who seemed to have stolen the music box, and this week we got a lot of answers in the episode, The King and the Core, so let's break it all down. This week's episode opened with Marcy, now controlled by the Core, asking to go by Darcy, short for Dark Marcy, a generic villain title and one used in a favorite video game of Marcy's. This was one of many indications that Marcy isn't as dead as the Hive claims, and that she is definitely somewhere in there and will be able to affect control of the body to some degree, giving her friends a chance to save her later. In an attempt to avoid this, the Hive wants to go through a technical process where old memories are deleted from their mind that they no longer need. This process seems to have contributed to their dehumanization over time, removing anything that doesn't help them as conquerors. Andrias plugs Darcy in for this and then starts to go on his own trip down memory lane, with the rest of the episode playing out as a flashback to what happened 1,000 years ago. As a young prince, Andrias was being trained under the previous king, his father. Andrias is much smaller in size here, and while he still looks pretty mature, he appears to be really young comparatively, young enough that he still feels connected to his friends, Beryl and Leif, who are mortals and will die much younger than him. Beryl was the green toad who served as a guard at Andrias' castle, and Leif was a pink frog, a gardener who helped take care of some of the interdimensional creatures they captured, such as the Mossmen. Leif has been theorized for a while now to have some relation to Sprig because of her color and general design, and this week's episode really emphasized that by having Leif reveal that she has perfected a dance that hypnotizes animals, such as Sprig teaches Anne is a big family tradition. These three were close friends, and were even allowed to be painted into a royal portrait with Andrias, but despite this, Andrias' father thought that he gave too much attention to Beryl and Leif, and made it clear to Andrias that he will rule alone and carry on the traditions, not rule alongside his friends. In this flashback, we are reminded that Andrias' people have been invading dimensions for generations at this point, which should mean thousands of years, with the music box providing access to those worlds, and power to their floating city and mini robots that help achieve their goals. Despite this, the invasions seem rather peaceful compared to what they are becoming. When Andrias' father tells him that he will be in charge of the invasion of a new planet called Earth, Andrias is excited at first, but becomes scared when he hears that he will have to wipe out all of the humans on the planet, as opposed to just taking some for research like they did with previous invasions. Andrias' father explains that their system requires more resources, and exterminating the humans and mining the Earth's resources is just part of the process of keeping it going. Andrias isn't thrilled about this, but when his father gives him the key to the music box, and the authority that comes with that, he is too happy to worry about his moral issues. It is only at this point that Andrias learns about the Core, which his father says contains the greatest minds of Amphibia, including his ancestors. It is possible, as I have theorized before, that the invasions were really just explorative missions with some prisoners taken, and that the Core is just pushing Andrias and his family to become more and more ruthless than their ancestors ever wanted them to be. Though it is also possible that these invasions were always more hardcore than we've been led to believe, and Andrias and the rest of society was simply unaware of this until now. Regardless, Andrias took his friends to show them the music box with the key, and after having too much fun and playing with the box inappropriately, Leif activates its powers and receives a vision of the future. The first thing she sees is the horrifying mining of Amphibia that happens after Andrias got the box, which is interesting because if she never stole the box, Andrias would have never had to start mining Amphibia for resources and would have been able to invade the Earth when all the humans were still primitive, and giving them the ample resources they needed without exploiting their own planet. Leif goes on to see flashes of other events in the show, pictures of the Elm's prophecy and Andrias' own horrifying mural, but then, most horrifying of all, a vision of the moon slowly crashing into the world of Amphibia with its people in terror. This falling moon may be the fall prophesied by the Mother of Olms. According to the prophecy, the three girls will either fight or embrace the fall, and that choice will determine the fate of all. But which is the right choice, we do not know yet, and what they have to do regarding this falling moon, I can't wait to find out. This vision horrified Leif, convincing her that Amphibia is doomed if they go through with the invasion of Earth. Because of this, Andrias calls a meeting with the king's court where Leif presents her case, explains her vision, and offers her expertise as castle gardener to try and give a sense of authority behind her suggestion. This may sound silly, but as a castle gardener, she was taking care of interdimensional moss creatures and mastering dances that could even hypnotize the king's guards. She likely held authority outside of even just that job, and perhaps was well on her way to being some sort of royal advisor on the ecosystem of Amphibia as a whole. Andrias' father dismissed this, however, citing the stones as their birthright, and with it, the right to invade the other worlds and use them as they please to unite the multiverse. Here we learn that Andrias' father is well aware of the prophecy from the Mother of Olms and talks about it in a way that indicates that the entire court is, but that they believe themselves to be above concepts like fate. When Andrias insists that he will fall in line with his father's desires, Leif decides to steal the music box for herself and escape with one of the Moss Men, explaining the one that Anne would eventually see 1,000 years later. Leif goes on to say that she will journey to the Mother of Olms to figure out what to do next, which is likely how she ended up going to the human world, but from there it could go several ways. She could live and die in the human world, or perhaps use the box to transport home while leaving the box behind. Perhaps she came back and started a family in Wartwood, perhaps even helping to found it, explaining the many great peoples in the history of the Planter family, and eventually leading to the birth of Sprig and Polly. Some fans want to believe that she is somehow their mom, but this doesn't really make sense with Hop-Op in the timeline, but who knows. Regardless of what happened to Leif, Andrias would go on to beg his father for a chance to fix everything. At first, his father would say everything is ruined, but the core reveals that the prophecy says that the box will return one day, but they don't know when. Until then, they decide to bury their old way of life, preserve it so it can be reactivated once they get the box back, and wait until that day comes. Earlier in the episode, Andrias' father said that he would be dying soon and joining the core, and seemed to know that he would not be alive to see the return of the box, but that Andrias would, and it ultimately has fallen on him to undo the changes caused by his close friendship with the toad and the frog. Andrias' father would die sometime in the 1,000 years that have passed, and Andrias would take over, but as we saw in this episode, Andrias' father still exists inside of the core and perhaps is a stronger part of it than the other pieces so far. Because of Leif's betrayal, Andrias insists that all of her people, the frogs, need to be restrained, leading to them becoming lowly farmers given little respect in the current age. His toad friend, meanwhile, was sent out to guard these villages, with the other toads following, leading to the system in modern times of toads watching over their frogs and stealing as much resources as they can from them through taxes, with the toads enjoying a healthy cut and sending the rest to the still flourishing Utopia. Over the next 1,000 years, Andrias would be constantly revising the stories of the past, with each generation hearing slightly different stories of Amphibia's history, until the time of power was entirely forgotten, and Andrias was just seen as a king doing the best he can do by his people, and perhaps trying to slowly expand that outwards to the other species outside of Utopia. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're going to be covering Amphibia until the very end, and then 1 week later we'll be having a live stream interview with the cast of Amphibia and the series creator himself, Matt Braley, and you won't want to miss it. See you guys there.